Welcome back to Daily Persuasion. I am Joshua Lisec. I am the New York Times bestselling author and co-author, ghostwriter of a number of books, and a hypnotist. Through this unique set of experiences, I like to teach you how to better influence the VIPs of your life and career. And I have a guest today who is going to teach you how, from the journalism profession, transitioning into independent news and media, how some of the most powerful influence levers within the human psyche work, how they've been used for good but also for ill, and how you can leverage some of those in your own life to get people to do what you want, because you're a good person and want good things for people, right? I have James David Dickson here of Michigan Enjoyer and the Enjoyer podcast. Hey, James.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you, Joshua.
Sure thing, sure thing. So you are officially I think the third guest of the Daily Persuasion here, little experience. And one of the reasons that you were suggested to be brought on is because you've had experience in mainstream journalism, in actual journalism, but you've made the transition, like a lot of people have, to independent media, podcasts and distribution, this sorts of things, where you have a lot more control over the message. And if I remember correctly, you did Michigan-based election reporting for the New York Post during the election season,
Correct.
2024. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so he's got a little bit of both people, the mainstream, traditional, and also the new media. And I would imagine with your shirt, "Make News Local Again," I wonder, do you remember a time, James, when news was local, and now it has to be made local again? Do you remember that time?
I do remember that time, Joshua, and it's a blessing to see you, to be on here on the Daily Persuasion with you. When I was a kid, and I think a lot of our best memories are from when we were kids, right? You had these powerhouse newspapers in Detroit. My parents were free press readers because they were Democrats. If you're a Republican in Michigan, you're probably a Detroit news reader. But you had two great options, and every morning, I mean, a lot of houses got both. And I just remember these papers being so thick and so rich of information. And one of my favorites was on Sundays, the news and the free press would do a joint issue because they had a joint operating agreement. And I would always seek out the Thomas Sowell column. Because for one, it was kind of cool seeing a dude who looked like me, but it was also cool seeing a dude who was saying a lot of the things that I thought made sense and the things you weren't supposed to say. I mean, reading a free press, you're going to see so much of that liberal message. And here was a guy saying there was another way to do it. So I remember the days of the great Detroit newspapers. And then over time, you see that corporate ownership really take its toll to where we've had people with a Pulitzer Prize in this market be fired by people who, work in Virginia because that's where Gannett is headquartered. And so even these hiring decisions aren't made locally. It was a minor scandal a few years ago when the Free Press, they were going to scrap the special old English lettering on the Free Press masthead to make it look standard like all the Gannett papers. And that was just kind of like viewed as part and parcel of what you get with Gannett. It flattens out the local character, but it doesn't improve anything. So that's kind of the problem we have now.
That reminds me of, I believe it's Sinclair Broadcasting Group.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have run
Oh, yeah.
those clips where it's all of these local television stations doing local news, but all of the anchors all across America are all reading the same script. And that same video has been montaged together into the one video saying it, and then the second, and then the third, and then by the end you have this checkerboard of all these local news all saying the same thing. And that's sort of this oligopolization or monopolization maybe
Yes.
of local news by large companies who are out of state. And populists like me would say, well, that's a problem because you're removing local accountability, local ownership, etc. But is there a good argument for that, James? I'm curious. Is there a good argument for the buying up of these? Maybe it's like to protect them because some are more profitable than others and we're protecting local news. Is there an argument for it, or is that full of crap?
I don't think profit is why they're doing it. I think anytime you're in journalism, first of all, you're probably not in journalism, period, for the profits. Whether that's a writer, whether that's the owner, it's for the power, right? It's the power motive, not necessarily the profit motive, which is why a lot of these guys are paid like they've taken a vow of poverty. Because I remember reading a quote, it was some great reporter asking for a raise, I think at the Washington Post, And the editor told him, look, you're having so much fun, you wouldn't want to do anything else. I don't need to give you a raise. I give you a job. And that's so much of the mentality in news. And so, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Sinclair thing because I know a guy in Michigan, Dave Bondi, who did the same thing, except he left TV news, which was much more lucrative. He left TV news to go independent, and he was actually on that montage. And the reason that kind of montage works is because nobody knows that everybody's reading it. So everywhere, somebody's assigned to read it, but nobody knows that everyone's reading it at every property they have. And so if you're Mr. Sinclair, this is a great way to consolidate your power and get your message out there. The reversal of it is that it looks creepy as hell and it looks inorganic. And then you have, the people who did it, like a Dave Bondi, backing up on you and saying those words were put in my mouth, that battery was put on my back, I disavow what I had to read. And so you can actually end up worse off than you were before doing it.
Interesting. Okay, so you mentioned the journalism path is more so a labor of love. What was your experience being motivated to pursue that? What was the sort of passion project that got you into that career?
Yeah, I've always had this need to get my voice out there and this view of the world. And so that's the first thing I did when I got to the University of Michigan, is I went looking for the conservative paper. It was called the Michigan Review. And at U of M, they have this event called Festifall every year where all the student groups go out at the diag and try to, show their face and grab people as they walk to classes. And I was so disappointed this was fall of 2002 because they didn't have a table at Festifall. And so I was just like, forget it, man. I'm just going to go to the Michigan Daily, which is obviously the daily paper, better known, better funded, that kind of thing. There's no journalism major at U of M, so you're literally going to work at the place that publishes daily or the place that publishes every 2 weeks. And I wanted that place. And so I say, okay, they're not there. I'm going to go to the daily. So I sign up. Then I get this email right before I'm headed to a daily meeting, and it's like, if you want to write 500 words about whatever happened at the Ann Arbor City Council meeting, go to the Daily. But if you want to write the truth, basically, come to the Michigan Review. And that was just all I needed to hear. You talk about persuasion. You could see yourself wasting years covering these meaningless little meetings. Or you could see yourself having fun and trying to write some version of the truth. And so that's the path I took. Ended up becoming editor-in-chief of the Review. And then my last year in college actually ended up as a columnist for the Daily, too. So I got to do both, and that was cool. But, yeah, it's always been about just that chance to speak my voice because I always felt like I had something to say.
When did you, for the very first time, go from being interested in journalism, interested in this, we tell the truth, to actually being the one doing the journalisming?
My mom had to remind me of this years later because things change so fast as a teenager. But there was once upon a time when I would actually write on message boards. I would write these elaborate reviews of Monday Night Raw, pro wrestling, And so I just from the youngest ages, and then she came across some of them on the computer because this was the late 90s. This was the era when there was a computer and everyone saw what everyone was doing. We didn't have tablets or anything like that. And so she saw that and was just, it was essentially a form of journalism, right? It's like being a sports reporter, reporting what happened on the screen, but also giving your unique spin on it. And I think that's where journalism so often fails. In a world where we're all watching the same sports game, we're all watching the same debate on TV, you have to bring something better than the average bear, better than the average person sitting at home could see with their own two eyes. And my mom identified that I had the ability to do that, to see beyond what was there, because she had to watch it too, because there was also only one TV.
You know what is coming to mind for some reason all of a sudden is late 90s, early 2000s. Peter Jennings, Nightly News, ABC.
Yes.
I think it was at 6:30, from 6:30 to 7 p.m. every night Eastern time. And they have the same music every night, the same intro, the same clips. They would say, here are the top 3-4 stories, 3-4-5 stories happening in the world, right? And it was like 2 of them would be related to violence and suffering and destruction, either natural or man-made.
Yes.
And then they would stick like, here's a local interest story, could be positive, negative, or neutral, happening somewhere. And then like, so here's a happy little feel-good story, so you feel better about it at the end. And then they have the little closing credits and music and whatnot. And so you feel good about the broadcast you listened to despite the tension, so you want to listen to it again tomorrow night, and now you feel like you've been informed. But here's what occurred to me right around this time you're doing the message boards, James. I would think, wait a second, only like 4 or 5 things happened in the world today?
Bingo.
And you go, oh, so news is not really news. It's what they want us to think the news is. And I'm like in elementary school or middle school at the time, realizing this, right? And I sort of realized this, but my parents, being baby boomers, really believe that, like every generation did, they remember seeing John Kennedy be shot in the aftermath of that. They remember they were there for the moon landing in '69, which I believe did in fact happen, because I met people many years ago who worked on the Apollo program, and they seemed pretty legit to me and had lots of stuff from the moon and whatnot. And in any case, and then also the Challenger disaster, right? Yeah. So many and then of course 9/11. So the tube was their lens through which reality happened.
Yeah.
And so to say you can't trust the news is like, you mean I can't trust myself. Everything I believed is a lie. There's that Naval Ravikant quote I think you probably shared, which is, if the news is fake, imagine history.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, I will add to that, people say the winners write the history. No, the winners, ghostwriters, write the history, and we decide how it went.
Yes.
All that said, you as a journalist, sort of like an amateur doing sports reporting for pro wrestling in the 90s, and then now going to this student paper there at the University of Michigan, it sounds like you understood from an early age that if you simply say, here's what happened, there's no interest, there's no excitement, or there's no whatever. You have to infuse personality or a unique perspective, or the way you word something makes it feel special or vivid or nostalgic, or like you have to pull on emotions in some way. Do you have any memories of how you did that with this WWE pro wrestling at the time as a kid doing the sports reporting for message boards?
The challenge you're talking about is what Bob Seger described, right? What to leave in, what to leave out, what goes first, what goes last, whose voice goes first, how much how much space is given to the counter argument. One question I always use to evaluate, it's actually 2 questions, and anyone can use this to evaluate any news story anywhere in the world. Who does the story question, and who does the story explain? Because who they're explaining is who they clearly feel an affinity for, and that's who they feel sympathy for, and they need to make sure that's portrayed in the most accurate means. Who they're questioning, they're going to use words and characterizations that discount those people. So during the pandemic, Gretchen Whitmer, our governor up here in Michigan, she had all the power, and then Senate Republicans tried to negotiate with her. And the news used the existence of the attempt to negotiate as proof that the Senate Republicans were wrong, because of course Whitmer had all the power. And that was just a classic example of they're explaining Whitmer and they're questioning her critics. And so you could pull out the protractor and see the slant right there. But what you're getting at, and what I had to learn from that young age, is there's moments that matter, and there's certain things that matter. I call it the angle of absurdity, right? It could be the thing you may not have noticed in that match, or I get what it really meant because I saw a similar thing happen 3 SummerSlams ago. But no, news and any kind of writing, it's not just a pure recitation of facts. The most factual document any of us have in our home It's probably the telephone book. Has a lot of accurate names in there, accurate phone numbers, accurate addresses, but no truth. So truth is giving meaning to the accurate facts. And you don't even need the facts to be accurate. It's just assigning the meaning. And so one of the other things I've come to learn is that all journalism is politics. I could write the same. I could do a review of Monday Night Raw tonight, and someone else from the internet wrestling community could review the same show, and they would be different reviews. To an extent, that's not really possible in sports writing. Because it's so narrative based that it's like, what's that fact you're going to grab onto? What's that angle you're going to grab onto? And they're all going to be different points of emphasis. So it's about finding yours and arguing passionately for those.
What will probably be helpful for people is to immediately apply this to our own self-talk, our own like personal realities that, there are the facts about you and about your life, but there's also the truth, which is the facts that you choose to emphasize or de-emphasize.
Right.
I'm speaking a little about Scott Adams' book, Reframe Your Brain, that I worked with him on, where it's, here are the, let's say, the disheartening facts from the past that if you dwell on them, they then become extended out into your future, and then that becomes your narrative. Or you can choose a different set of facts or emphasizing those, and then narrative build on that, going from the usual frame of my past bad experience to a reframe that unlocks the potential for good experience. And I think what you're saying is that's what the news does, but it's to appeal to a particular population of voters or consumers to motivate them to do something. And I remember it seemed like in 2003, 2004, ABC News and Peter Jennings in particular were really trying to help John Kerry get elected. I noticed this as an 11, 12, 13-year-old.
It's so funny what you talk about, the emphasis, right? So Michigan football, my team, lost badly this weekend, bigly and badly. So Ohio State goes and beats Texas on the road, number 1 team, and we're all like, Texas wasn't that good. Then we go on the road and lose to Oklahoma, and they're damn sure not that good. And so what do you do with that, right? So you could write the sky is falling version of the story, or you could write the it's good it happened now version of the story. It's good they caught us now. It's good we learned these things about ourselves now. Or here's what I saw that's something that could be taken as a kernel and improved on and grown, and we could go forward and, and really, we're not going to let this one loss become 2. Whereas if you did get demoralized, that could easily happen.
And now you're 1-9.
Yeah. And so if you're not reframing, you're not trying. And we have to be doing this in our own reality. If I just had a story today, that I was pretty excited about. Editor didn't, really like the angle. They're not ready. They're not ready, right? And so now God has put me in this position to go about finding the people who are ready. And so it's always, if you make it, what does this thing, bad or good, how does that set me up for the next thing, which has to be good? Now you're reframing the right way. And so, but they can also make you feel bad. They can also take, like one of the things I used to do as a breaking news reporter is you call the biggest police departments. You call Detroit Police Department. What was the big crime overnight? I've heard it said you can literally create a crime wave by reporting on crime stories. And and what you're seeing now in cities like LA, when they're trying to tell you it's the second safest city in America, is the opposite. If we don't report it, and if the data isn't even collected in the first place to be reported on, then it didn't happen.
So this is interesting. That reminds me of the awareness of facts, or the foreknowledge that if we become aware of these facts, the narrative could be spun this way, so we just won't become aware of that.
Right.
That's the idea. So I saw that in Springfield, Ohio last September, right? They're eating the cats, or eating the dogs, or eating the pets of the people that live there, right? So I have had over the years a number of clients and customers from Haiti. and they regularly spoke casually about, given the third, they were forthcoming that Haiti, unlike the Dominican Republic, is truly an undeveloped third world type country in their experience, and it's not uncommon to see orphans chasing cats. I'll leave it at that. That's very common. That's an everyday occurrence. And one particular woman shared that that's how her and her sisters survived. Now, when you import a certain culture to a certain other place, do they immediately drop that culture? Probably not. There used to be what was called assimilation, enculturation, people called it that. Well, when you take 15,000 from one place and then put them in another, and overnight say, okay, now you're here, they don't immediately become of here. And so there were a number of incidents related to the goose snappings from the park, strange disappearances of cats and dogs from around the neighborhood. And this happened. And here's the interesting thing. Watching it, I knew about it when it was a local story, only being reported by Springfield News Sun on Facebook. I think this is the power of local news. And then when local news becomes national, everything changes.
Yeah.
So back in January, February 2024, there were a number of, I think it was city council meetings that were published on YouTube and got 5 views of residents coming complaining about their pets being catnapped and dognapped, with suspicion being cast on, with credible evidence demonstrated and presented at that time. Again, all at the local level, only happening locally, about all this happening and about the animals and whatnot disappearing. And then there were reports about how Haitian migrant workers were being offered well-paying jobs that locals were not given access to. There were some business owners who seemed to have interest in those businesses, local to Springfield, who also owned multifamily housing and single-family homes that received some sort of benefits from bringing in the Haitians.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so you see all this. And the Springfield News Sun and other local reporters are talking about this from like January, February to into the summer and into the early, very end of summer. And this is these are the facts for 7-8 months. But none of it is all risen to the level of being national news. And then an anonymous poster named, I think his avatar name is Captive Dreamer. He took one of those 5-view YouTube videos and published it on X, formerly Twitter, and it became the talking point of the second presidential debate, the first between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And in my opinion, he had a rather terrible performance in that. But because of that one line that then became like a song and auto-tuned, he ultimately won the debate so bigly that Kamala Harris was begging him for rematches for weeks thereafter. And of course, as immediately the politicization of the facts, where it became, well, if Trump says it, it's probably true or at least directionally accurate. Or if Trump says it cannot be true, there can be no truth to it whatsoever, nuance-free zone. That's what I mean by politicization there.
Oh, yeah.
It's like both sides are going to latch onto it, and then the truth is going to get polarized, right? So there are these facts that happened, and I was shown a number of text messages that led me to believe, oh, yeah, the cats are eating the dogs. I don't know how much of that ultimately bubbled up into being national or even international attention. And, of course, I had my previous experience with Haitians. You
could have got $5,000 from Chris Rufo if you'd shared those text messages with him.
Yeah, his story was pretty funny about cats getting grilled out in Dayton, which is my town, right? That's funny. I don't.
You always like to see your town in the news.
Yeah, that you like. Oh, great.
I was using that as a talking point. Like, if it could happen in Springfield, it could happen in Southfield, where I live, and just how little say any of us had over our communities. And there's a saying in pro wrestling: moments, not matches. Yeah. And I think Trump's performance in that debate was a great example of that. All you remember is they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. You don't remember him being, we're sick. We study this stuff, but you don't remember him being petulant about crowd size and these little side things that he got dragged into.
Yeah.
You remember that one moment. And I don't think Harris was ready for that world. She never gave us moments. She never gave her side moments to latch onto and say, okay, she can do this.
You know what I was building towards with that is the reporters, right? So the locals were getting it right, and that's what you tend to see is apolitical or at least pre-politicized local
Yes.
news tends to be the most accurate. Once it becomes politicized or national, all nuance and truth is probably gone at that point. Or at least it's going to be the following scenario. So we were talking moments ago about how if let's say deeply biased journalists become aware of facts that they might become aware of, they will stop it just because they don't want to have to report that. It's why LA is the safest city in the United States. It's because they stopped reporting crime statistics to the FBI or some such thing like that, right? So we're a safe city if we don't report the crimes that happen here, right? That's like, okay, really. So the truth is completely detached from the facts. The truth being the narrative about the facts that they're aware that they could collect, but they're not going to, so that they don't have to be fourth dangerous city in the United States or whatever the case may be. I went to Springfield to do a little on the ground business there in September of last year, and who did I bump into but this little 4'11" twink of a man from Politico. And he sounded and looked exactly as I just described that right there, with the tousled hair and the glasses and all.
I can damn near smell him.
Yes. And he interviewed me about the situation. And I had one of my children at the time, and I did not want to escalate. And because he had his recording was on, I did not want to escalate with children present, particularly young children. And so I attempted to thread the needle. I don't think our interview ever was actually published, but he spent most of the time answering questions that he was asking me, which is bizarre. He would ask me a question, stop, and then immediately pick up talking again, and then give his opinion on it, and then he would then put the mic in my face after he'd shared his opinion, answering his own question. And I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with that? Anyway, that was a fun political little game. But the interesting thing is, he said over and over, referring to the assertion of the consumption of domesticated animals by the Haitian migrants numbering 15,000, at least, he said 2 to 3 times, I recall, it's been debunked. It's been debunked. It's all been debunked. He said it like that. What did he just do there? He used the passive sentence construction. Now, this is where the not reporting, the not investigating of the facts protects you from having to report those facts.
Yes.
Had he personally investigated? No. Did Politico investigate this? No. What were they reporting? If you follow through the links and you click through, you see that they're actually quoting, when they say it's been debunked, and all mainstream media on the left were saying this, they would say, Haitian community leaders have confirmed none of this is happening. And we believe them. So there you go. It's been debunked.
Right.
They didn't
Well,
actually
we
go
all
on
know
the
that
reporting or go into the
journalism is
neighborhoods
about the testing of claims. It's about comparing what was said versus what we know to be true. But in this particular case, and you talk about moments, right? They were given just enough of a moment they thought to latch on to. The problem is it just wasn't believable. And what you said about the passive voice thing, I think that is a point few people would catch. It has been debunked. It's been proven that the vaccine is safe and effective.
Yes. Who? Did you? The person telling me to take it?
and so this little 411 guy, he's not pouring through thousands of papers. He's not reading these reports.
He's not going into the neighborhoods. He's not going to the houses. He's not going to their markets. He's not doing any of that. He's not going to the Haitian restaurants and looking in the dumpster behind it. I mean, like basic, gumshoe detective, investigative journalism type work.
But what he's trying to do is use the savvy of, I'm the reporter who knows what they're talking about, and you, the citizen, don't want to look stupid to me. So if I tell you it's been debunked, you better just run with that. Otherwise, you're the conspiracy theorist, you're the weirdo, you're the liar. And that works as long as that news source is taken as credible. And that's why it doesn't work anymore.
I think it still works on, unfortunately, a percentage of the population who still believe the news is real, or at least theirs is. You know, I think Scott Adams has the 5 levels of media awareness. And a lot of the older generation, unfortunately, because of aforementioned reasons, like growing up where what they saw on TV, like that was the world happening and major events and whatnot. And the same news networks years later now reporting it's been debunked are the same ones who said this, that, and the other main event happening, right? That's some sort of institutional type of news. But, you know, level. I think the lowest level of awareness is what I see from the news source I chose to watch, read, or otherwise consume has informed me because I'm an informed person, and therefore I only consume informing news from informing news sources, and I'm smart. So therefore, what I've chosen to consume has to be true because I'm smart. It's identitarian, really. News
You've talked
consumption.
about truth is tribal,
Yes.
and to a large extent, the baby boomers are their own tribe, right? Especially when it comes to believing the news. I mean, we have a guy here, used to be on Detroit local news, Devin Scillian on the NBC affiliate. You know, one of these tall, good-looking guys. You know,
Yeah.
and I was in the news business, but if I said A and Devin Scillian said B, my mom would be like, you know, I like you, Jim, but I might have to go with Devin Scillian on this one because that's just how they were wired. If the tall white guy on TV said it, it had to have been true.
Well,
And
now with baby boomers, James, it's if the buxom blonde bombshell on Fox News says it, it has to be true.
and now it's on both sides, right? And
Yes.
so you have this problem where, and so this is the big problem for the news business is, yes, there are certain people like my mom, but she's passed on. And so that cohort is shrinking, unfortunately, by the day. So there are people who still view the nightly news as indispensable, but they're not creating any new ones. And so no one our age thinks of that. And so what's
Yeah.
the plan? Because that generation's dying off. Viewership's already fallen off a cliff. The analogy I use is, journalists have two tools in their hand, right? You have credibility and the ability to influence events. But you can only make it to the shore with one. And if you're going to only make it with one, it needs to be credibility because that's the one that affects the other one. If you don't have credibility, you don't have the ability to influence events. But for a decade now, the media has been telling us, don't believe your lying eyes. So think about the guy who says, you know, he owns a landscaping company. Maybe he works for one and says, I don't know, man, that Donald Trump seems pretty cool. I went to his rallies. They're pretty big. He seems like he could win. And the guy who's back from Thanksgiving, works at NBC or Politico, he could never win. It would never happen. And then he has to go back in Thanksgiving 2016, and the news professional was wrong, and the landscaping guy was right. What can you do in that scenario? Well, Trump must have stolen the election, right?
Yeah.
And so they have just gone into this shell where the truth is so painful that even the purveyors of truth are hiding and running from it. It can't work. It's not sustainable, and it's not sustaining.
No. Now that makes me think of a couple of things. Number one, something that you quoted that I have said before is that truth is tribal. Truth has become tribal, and there's no evidence that can shake people's confidence. I don't think there's short of us happening upon a group of individuals speaking Haitian Creole in a single family home that was being inhabited by 15 Haitians with a live cat that they were currently unaliving in the kitchen with plates everywhere and the grill going. Short of that, I don't think that the political little man would have believed it. The amount of visceral evidence that's required to change someone's mind nowadays is so... The standard for that is so high, it's almost impossible to get. But those who do get it become the greatest evangelists of that particular fact. So one of the reasons that Nicole Shanahan has gone from being a donor to an activist is because of some, let's say, unfortunate side effects of a particular, I'll word it this way, medicine that were consumed by a family member. And there was no denying what she witnessed and the visceral outcome long term from that. And so she became a champion for that particular population, as had RFK Jr. So that's why they were such a good fit together. And unfortunately, that's what it takes to create real news now. is having personally experienced it. But the upshot of that is all you need is a cell phone. We get pictures, we get videos, we get sort of first-person perspectives of the world as it's happening. And what we're not seeing is the mainstream media pick that stuff up. You know how Twitter memes that are popular now, they're going to be on Facebook in about 2 or 3 years, and all the
Right.
boomers are going to be showing them?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the mainstream is about 2 to 3 years behind cutting-edge social media. You know, there are now big groups that are just now announcing, we're going to teach you media literacy and how to clean up your information environment.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think our mutual Michael Gimmerin created a course on that 5 years ago and was teaching all of the influencers now who are now influencing the influencers of the influencers 5 years ago. And there's little pockets like that who are 5 years ahead of everything all over social media, building their own little audiences. And so their truths are not necessarily wrong, but their truths are tribal. Meaning it's like a chieftain with his or her little tribe of 100,000 followers or 1 million followers or 3,000 paid subscribers who super chat and tip them via Venmo and buymeacoffee.com and PayPal. And so to find out what's happening in the world, you have to be part of a tribe. If you want to know it's true, you got to get in with the tribe. Isn't that so strange about how we ended up now? There's not any one news for everyone. It's curate your reality now.
Absolutely. And I think I have a lot of respect for Ben Shapiro. I don't agree with much of what he says, but he's a successful guy. I can't knock him. He's still podcasting. Mine got canceled, so he's doing something right. But he set us back a decade when he said, facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah.
If you're winning a high school debate title, absolutely. Speak 2,000 words a minute and bombard it with more facts than can be matched, and you'll win. Congrats. But that's not how presidential debates go. That's not how life goes. That's not how persuasion of other human beings who are not working from a clear point scale goes. I would say the opposite is closer to true. Feelings don't care about your facts. And so it doesn't matter how much truth you have if I am dead set determined to not believe you, to not let it affect me. And so whether I have to... So Trump couldn't just be good at politics, right? Had to have colluded with Russia to win that first election. Had to have done something wrong to win the second election. It couldn't just be that I'm wrong. And so because I have to protect myself mentally, you know a lot more psychology, because I have to protect myself from the thought that I was wrong, I will twist and turn every fact to fit that.
Yeah, it was this persistent messaging around the impossibility of Trump winning and beating Hillary, and the guaranteed certainty of Hillary winning with a 99% chance according to everybody. And so when the impossible, according to them, now here's the thing. Yes, they tried to convince everyone that it could only have been through divine intervention or maybe Putin intervention that Trump could have defeated these impossible odds. But by persistently saying it was a virtually guaranteed election for Hillary, the news was trying to create news. So now when I think about news, I don't think they report what happens. They create what happens.
It's wish casting is what it is. Think about that Ann Seltzer poll in Iowa. So this woman, the week of the election, says she has Harris up 3 in Iowa. What she's essentially trying to do is create a run on the ballot box.
Oh, wow. And she's going to win. I better give her a nice big cushion.
Bingo. She's going to win. And they're trying to create that sense of inevitability. What they don't get is that we hate inevitability as a people and as a culture. We hate the idea that the fix is in. And so they kept just saying that the fix is in because they needed you to believe it, because they needed the left to show up, and they needed you to be demoralized and to say, well, hell, if he's losing Iowa, then what the heck am I doing voting in Ohio? They're trying to create realities. They're not reporting what happened. And so this is how journalism died, is that it stopped telling true stories.
Then what does new journalism do? Making news, making local news local again. What do you do instead? It still has to be narrative driven. Otherwise, nobody cares about facts. I just go to the county website and read what's happening in my county and just facts, court reports, these sorts of things. Nobody's going to pay for that, right? So how
I
do
think
you?
Roger Ailes said it perfectly in The Loudest Voice. Excellent miniseries on Showtime. Just the best thing you'll ever see about the rise of Fox News and how that all came about. But he talked about we're going to report the world as it is and also as they want it to be. And I've seen I forget what the exact quote is, but how your reader wants a stone to throw. They want that information that's going to give them an edge in that debate. And so that's the things you look for. So, for instance, a lot of people in Michigan don't like the World Economic Forum. They think it's creepy. They think it's global governance. They just have bad feelings about it. Okay, so what am I going to do with that? By the time I found out about it, like it had already happened. That wasn't my beat. So I couldn't just re-report the story. So I had to go search. And so what I found is that angle of absurdity to grab you in. It's not just that we're partners with them. You knew that. What if I told you that Michigan taxpayers paid $6 million so Gretchen Whitmer could get a ticket to Davos? Because that's what came with the partnership. And then you see her speak at Davos, and she wasn't just there, had speaking parts. The people of Michigan paid for Gretchen Whitmer to be portrayed at Davos as a world leader. Now you get it. Get it. And so, or we had another story where there was some environmental bill that was being considered by lawmakers in Michigan. And the bill was like 30 pages, going into this hearing, and like 50 pages by the end of it. But they didn't discuss anything that happened. That no one discussed the 20 pages, and the hearing was 15 minutes. So you could talk about what's in those extra 20 pages, or you could talk about how form informs function, right? How the very brevity of the meeting means they couldn't have considered what happened, which means that the negotiating had to have happened outside the public eye. And that's the stuff you feel viscerally, as opposed to me telling you these are bad people doing bad stuff.
What is your status quo, your present right now in the sort of reporting you're doing, the sort of independent journalism that you do, your routine now?
Yeah. So I'm doing one tomorrow with the New York Post. I do some freelancing, some news, some opinion, which is a little bit unusual. Usually, you pick one or the other, but they're a big enough, news outlet and a big enough mind that they get the same guy can report a story and the same guy can write an op-ed. Still writing columns for the Michigan Enjoyer, still doing stories with the Michigan Enjoyer. We had a video recently about how things have changed on Lafayette Boulevard in Detroit, from when we had these two locally owned powerhouse newspapers to them now printing in Ohio, of all places. And I know you're an Ohio nationalist, but as a nationalist of your state, you have to know how that kind of thing comes off, right? And so this was, especially Ohio. Look, if you said Indiana, I'd say, we were crafted from the Indiana Territory back in 1805. We were taken from their rib. We're their Eve. That would make sense to me. But Ohio?
Well, was there not in the early 19th century the Toledo border war between Ohio and Michigan, where there was actual bloodshed between the two would-be states or would-be states over who got that? I think
the bloodshed was minimal, but there was real preparations. There was real men brought to the border on both sides. Congress had to get involved, and it's funny because we had this guy Stevens T. Mason, who was our governor, a Virginia carpetbagger. His great-grandfather was George Mason, George Mason University, founding father. And this guy, we call him the boy governor. He was like 24 at the time, but held the line and held it so strong that Michigan wasn't going to budge 1 inch, that Congress had to intervene. And the ultimate resolution is we get what we now call the Upper Peninsula. I call it the Other Peninsula. And Ohio gets to keep Toledo, when a weaker approach would have been the default, which is that the bigger, stronger state, Ohio, gets whatever it wants, and you get Michigan what you're left with. And so it's one of those great stories that shows the men we choose to lead us. It actually does matter who that is in that chair. How
And
weak
that's why
or
the
how
news creates the
yes.
news. They want to be the ones who tell the people who to vote for to
And
put in
that's where
power.
the ability to influence events comes in, right? And so when it's working together, when they have credibility, then if they tell you that Harris is up 3, you believe it and you act that way. What they're essentially doing right now is acting as if. And so we're just going to put things out there. We don't know if it's true. We don't think you believe it. We're going to put it out there and hopefully you'll act on it. And that's the problem, is that without credibility, you lose the ability to influence events, because if people don't believe what you say, they won't believe your narratives.
And then Anne immediately, I think, after the election in her disastrously bad, wrong poll, I think she retired from
She
polling.
retired from the business.
Yes.
And so this was, I mean, this woman took a 20, 30-year reputation and Thelma and Louised it for
Yeah.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And I think about that scene in The Godfather, right? I think it was Godfather 2, where Michael sees a suicide bombing and he tells Hyman Roth, hey, these insurrectionists could win. They're not even getting paid, and they're willing to take their lives to take a few officers with them. This is why the left is so dangerous. I don't know many people on our side who have a 20, 30-year reputation that they would gladly torch in that way just for the hope of moving the polls 1, 2 points. They
It's the
have a
promise
ton
of
of them.
power that she could be the one who gave Harris
Yes. And what
Iowa.
if it had worked? And so
Yeah.
she's thinking the upside of it. And let's be honest, someone like that probably has so many sinecures that it doesn't really matter. You might lose your public reputation. She's not going to be on food stamps. I mean, she'll be able to support her family. And so they're able to be bold because A, they have no fidelity to the truth. B, they're willing to kill themselves off for the cause. But C, they know there's ultimately no consequence to the lies they tell.
Yeah. How many journalists, reporters, otherwise have completely blown their reputation only to reemerge months or years later acting like nothing ever happened, and then they rebuild an audience or they
You
claim
just
it
have to
from
tweet
somewhere
through
else?
it. And Mike Sternovich was completely right about this one. If something goes wrong, especially in these tribal times, like perfect example, we had a story at the Enjoyer about how this Michigan news outlet, Gongwer, had donated $10,000 to the Senate Democrats, right? Totally messed up. But the thing is, they hadn't. The state website was wrong. And so, the story ended up being, okay, the state website is wrong to the tune of 5 figures, all involving the Democrat Secretary of State and the Democrats who filed it wrong in a reputation-affecting way for a news outlet. I mean, that kind of thing, based on the level of worry they expressed to me from our headline, it was reputation-affecting had that gotten out there. But why was it still there? If everyone knew it was wrong, why is it still there, right? And
Yeah.
so what we had is a bunch of people in Lansing try to, oh my God, they said this, but no one considered the 95% of it that was the mistake of Democrats. And so even in being wrong, it proved my thesis that these people would go to great lengths to defend whatever Democrat they're covering. You'd walk past a 95% share of blame to find the 2.5% that's on us. And
And then they
so,
make a big deal about that, and then pretend that and then speak about the 2.5%,
as if
emphasizing that
that's a
so
global
much.
representation of you.
Yes.
But the reason it didn't work is because truth is tribal. I have my tribe, and they're stronger, and in some cases bigger than theirs. So it didn't matter what those people were saying about me. Let me put it this way. No one who liked me before that doesn't like me. No one who didn't like me before that likes me. Nothing changed. And so even when you think you have someone dead to rights nowadays, depending on how it goes, you might only fight them to a draw. That's how tribal truth is.
Yes, and one of the perils of modernity is that anyone can become the main character of the internet,
Mm-hmm.
and things can go very poorly for them. one of the things that sort of, let's say, put me on the map to become like a C-list celebrity in my niche, well, maybe D-list at worst, is in 2022, I wrote that
Mary
now
Sue.
infamous Mary Sue thread, which
Mary
then
Sue,
got,
legendary.
yeah, the Mary Sue thread that got, it got 13 million impressions. But that was just the first one. If you add up the others, it was and all the replies and the replies, it was probably tens, if not close to nine figures in terms of the number of views that got. It was the number one story of social media all weekend back in December of 2022.
That's incredible.
And the vast majority of it was negative, personal attacks. I got hate mail and death threats and fake accounts popping up and attempted hacking of various accounts that I own on the internet. It was ruthless. But instead of being afraid, I was excited and energized to it. Like, attention.
Yes.
Because I had learned from the Mike Cernovich School of Public Relations, which
is the P.T. Barnum school, right? Which is that there are no bad headlines. Everything is flippable.
Yes, and what I realized was, look how ugly and distorted the people are who hate me. And I would just share their pictures. I would share their hate to my audience and say, "Thank you for sharing!" Exclamation point, smiley face, right? And it was like, that's not how you're supposed to respond to a hater. You're supposed to defend yourself and be upset.
Yeah,
that's not right. People were very confused, and so it started to pop off. Once it got past 100,000 views, it sort of went outside of my network of fans, and then it went to the fandom that absolutely hated it. And it was in that particular space that I fanned the flames to make it go viral. And that's when it got the attention of a lot of people like Jack Posobiec. And it was a year later after following me because of that thread that he reached out to me to do the book on communism.
That's incredible.
He'd been following me for a year because he thought, wow, this guy's got balls, is what he said of that particular thing. Seeing me do some of the stuff that he and Mike Cernovich had been doing since 2015. Of course, I learned from them, watching them do it. Bad reviews from bad people are good reviews, as I like to now say.
Is that the origin of that quote?
That particular experience, I think it was, actually, because
just hearing you say it, that's what I thought was, this is what he's talking about. Like, when you show the people and you say, wait a minute, if these are the people who are against me, thank God.
Yes. Now, there is an older quote that is a spiritual predecessor to it, which is something like, the exact words aren't coming to me, but it's something to the effect of, judge me by my critics, judge me by my enemies, don't judge me by my fans, judge me by my enemies, something like that, from an old school American writer from the old days, let's say, when sort of pulp news was first a thing. I'm wondering, James, if all this, if we can tease out some specific to-dos, takeaways, tips, tricks, tactics for people that, that consume news and information and like to watch programs like this, but aren't necessarily like newsmakers, or they don't have a podcast. They're just working a career, or they're getting ahead. They're making ends meet, and they're making meets end. And things are going really well, let's say, but they're not necessarily like an influencer and they have 50 followers. But they can move and shake in their own world.
Yeah. First thing I would say is, if you're, just for literacy sake, who does the story question? Who does it explain? If you know those two things, you automatically know what you're dealing with, and then you have to be able to extract the facts from the opinions and the characterizations. And just know, sometimes they can happen in the same sentence. They could be separated by just a comma. And so you really have to read with that red pen in your head.
Yeah.
But as far as
Joshua Lisec, the self-styled controversial ghostwriter.
That's exactly it. I'm going to write something about this someday, the tyranny of adjectives. because that's what they do. And that's always, I think, the mark of an amateur hand in propaganda, is when you're slathering on adjectives. And whenever you're insulted by the left, it'll be, I'm right. I mean, what they say about me, I'm a foot fetish fascist and all these things.
Which is one of the best attacks I have ever seen, and is so much fun. And I'm like, wow, he sounds amazing.
Like they say crazy things, and that, and so, but yeah, being able to take those bullets, I think, is a good sign. But as as a storyteller, think about that angle of absurdity, right? And I learned this when I was at Michigan Capital Confidential. So this is the Mackinac Center. It's a conservative think tank in Michigan. You talk about the narrow path. I thought Christianity was the narrow path. Try working for a policy house in Michigan. So there's just only certain issues you talk about. Has to be policy, never politics. So how do you get people to read when everything is red meat that's being thrown at them? You have to give them your own version of red meat. You have to give them that angle of absurdity, the thing that's so ridiculous it can't be true, but it is. And what I found is that if you give people the thing they want, it's like dating, right? You give them what they want, they will reciprocate. One of the best pieces of advice I got in dating as a young man is do what you want your girlfriend to do, and next time she will. And so if you want them to read that long, boring-ass policy story, give them that meat up front. Give them that thing that's going to hook them in. And then when they see that the fact is so ridiculous, they're going to see how you learned it, how you proved it, what you do with the information, and then they'll give you what you want. But you have to be thinking about them first, and it is like dating. If you're going into a date thinking about what do I say, you're not going to do well. You got to be curious about the other person without interviewing them, right? And so if you're thinking about how can I get to know her, you might win. If you're thinking about what do I say that I come off as this great guy, you lost. You already lost. So that's what you have to think about is what can I give them?
Yes, that is necessary not just for one-to-many, but one-to-one in like parenting relationships, dating relationships, romantic relationships, marriage, and so on and so forth, where you want the other person to do something, take an action. What can I do that makes it likelier that they're going to take that action? And that's how I define persuasion. It's where you're making it easier for someone to do the thing you want them to do. And the key is, what will make it easier for them? So you have to be audience focused. That's how the news does think. What's going to make it easier for people in Iowa to vote for Kamala who weren't going to, and to keep Trump voters home? Oh, telling them that she's ahead in this poll. So they were using this particular persuasion, making it easier. And of course, we can do the same. Hopefully, not on behalf of Kamala, comrade, but we can do the same in our own personal lives. What does it make it? What will make it easier? And some of these tools will, and I think it does. Ethical persuasion does demand an adherence to certainty that you will not use certain tactics unless you absolutely have to. And there are some powerful manipulation tactics and techniques that really work. I've shared some of them before. I've written threads laying out. I had one recently. Here, here's what is it? One retweet equal one manipulation technique that you should be aware of. The first 25 are on me, and then I listed 25 that are like, oh, these are dirty. These are really dirty, and they work. And sometimes the way to persuade someone to do what you want is to just absolutely mess with their head. People who use Darvo tactics are really good at this. That's where you deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. So if the manipulation tactics that work are ones that make the person or the observers go, well, that's not fair, that's not right, that's not wrong, but I'm not stopping you. I'm lost in this confusion over here. Instead of responding or taking my own action, I'm talking about how imagine if the roles were reversed. I'm calling hypocrisy while you're over there doing the things that are dark and unethical and manipulative. But I'm over here talking about how not fair it is, the things you're doing to me. I'm not actually stopping you. And those manipulation tactics work. And I think the new right is becoming, I don't know if they are yet, but they're becoming gun shy with some of those tactics.
Yes. In the situation I just mentioned with that news outlet, I Darvoed my way out of that.
Yeah.
If you think two Democrats are going to make a mistake and that this is going to wind up on JD's ledger, that's just simply never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And so by parsing out that blame and getting it to the right people,
Yeah.
I gave my people something to grab onto. It's like, aha! I knew these people were jerks. I knew they were in the tank for the Democrats. This proved it all along. And so you can do that from even off your back foot, even when you're dead wrong. I should have been dead to rights. Had it been me, I would have had that guy dead to rights. But not everybody studies this stuff.
Yeah. One that comes to mind is right around the time that Reid Hoffman had allegedly been caught on recording wishing for the assassination of Donald J. Trump during the election season last year in conversation with Peter Thiel. Shortly after that, he wrote this pseudo apology post, and after Trump was in fact shot in the ear, he wrote a pseudo apology post, and I don't recall exactly the wording, but I believe he attempted to do a little bit of Darvo, attacking Trump for being the one who raised the temperature of the rhetoric in the room.
It's
And
your fault for being attackable.
yes, so he attempted to Darvo his way out of that, and the best Darvo was a counter Darvo, which is deny everything he said and attack back. Now you can be a good person and do this. So what did Mike Cernovich do? And other people on the right, they quote posted and replied to that pseudo apology saying, "Why are you on Epstein's flight log?" And it's just he just shut everything down. It's over. And then just over and over and over again. Using the comma, doing the same thing. Reid Hoffman, known visitor to Pedophile Island, end comma. And it's over.
And
There's
these
nothing else that
fake
can be
news
said.
techniques work. Oh, this thing has become controversial. It's become a flashpoint. Sometimes at the Enjoyer, I'll actually write a story in the style of fake news just to mess with people.
Yes. Now do that in your personal relationships. Put feelings over facts, and you can get everything you want, right?
This stuff really works. Because we are people who have feelings, and I think about the courtroom and my concern in Michigan. Like they've even gone with the trans pronouns in court, and I think that's so dangerous because to me, a courtroom is the one place where you're asked to be better than yourself. You literally take a vow that you're going to put aside your personal bias and you're going to go by what you hear. You're not going to act like a reply guy on Twitter. You're really going to go by what you hear in that setting. The fact that people have to go out of their way and damn near hypnotize and train themselves to be fair and thoughtful just shows how far off that our defaults are. So you got to catch people at their default settings, which is they're emotional, they're biased.
And the way to capture anyone is through words, and I think that's largely why leftists, not just some of the liberals, but people who are really dedicated to it and will devote their lives to earning power and building status on the left and sort of irregular revolutionary engagements to subvert and infiltrate and otherwise overtake institutions throughout the United States. So you look at lawyers and journalists. Why are they also left-wing, radically left-wing? Because words. All they do are use words all day long. Words create reality. What is that? Power. If you can create reality for people, tell them their reality is false, here's a different one, you do that with words. And that's what the hypnosis profession understands. But it's not been fully applied for the masses. It's used to okay, I want to eat less, stop smoking, and sleep better. Not what if it was, I want to end abortion in the United States of America forever. That's a question you could ask a group of hypnotists and they would teach you how to do it. Probably for less than $1 billion. It would be done forever. And you go, what? That's power. Because it's words you use. And just simple adjustments of words can change everything. Our friend Bowtie Trance, he gave 3 examples of this. Imagine if Republicans, instead of saying that they're pro-life, what if they had said from the beginning and now, we're pro-baby? What if instead of saying...
see the baby.
Yeah.
You can
What
see
if
the
we're
baby
saying,
when they say
I'm
that.
heterosexual, you say, I'm a normal sexual.
Yeah.
What instead of agreeing with them that they're transgender, what if we call them transvestites, like we used to?
Yeah.
Those 3 words completely one-shot persuasion from the other side.
Yeah. And we have to study this stuff because the most valuable real estate on this planet is between your two ears. Everybody is trying to get in our brains, and we do it with our resources, but I mean there's $1 trillion companies trying to do the same thing. The algorithm, it's big business. Getting inside your head, big business. So I think one value of knowing these tactics is hopefully as you know them, it renders them inert in your own life. You're less susceptible to fake news or to persuasion, but you also have to know what it is so you can move people. So you can move people who are movable. And, imagine, someone wanting to know more about politics and you not having a reframe or someone come, well, Trump's not that bad, is he? And you don't have anything for him. You got to have something to say. And so just think always, the last piece of advice I would give is always think about how to reframe whatever has happened, especially a bad thing. One thing I love to do, I pride myself on, any day I identify as the worst day in the year, I go to the gym that day. Because I'm putting a floor on how bad anything could possibly get by going to the gym. And so, how can you reframe? Because if you're not reframing, you're not trying, you're just taking whatever life gives you, and they're going to be bad hands generally.
Absolutely. There are people who are going through a lot of trials right now, and their life will look very different on the other side. And something that helps them reframe that is something like, the trial that you're in, it is because the thing that you were doing prior wasn't working out. Here's the thing. Most people who were in that situation that wasn't working out, they will stay that way for the rest of their lives. Be filled with regret and misery. They're going to use the sunk cost fallacy to bias themselves into staying in that situation, whatever that was like. And they're going to get to the end and they're going to be miserable forever. You now going through this trial are leaving that situation that millions of people will wish now and in decades to come that they could have gotten out of if only 30 years ago, where you are right now.
Right.
You're the one who is free. And now you've completely changed their reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've helped people do that with job loss, with relationships that break down. If it broke down for a reason, right? As opposed to no reason. And that reason may be, may create a situation where this is actually addition by subtraction. And so you have to view that uncertainty as the cost of getting to the new life. I think about that cartoon where the little girl is holding this tiny teddy bear in her arm, and she doesn't want to give it up. And Jesus is like, no, give it to me, give it to me. And behind his back is the huge teddy bear.
Yes.
And, but there has to be, what makes it faith is that moment where I give you the teddy bear and I don't have mine yet. That there is an act of faith.
I think it would be wise if we all practice little micro moments of faith throughout our lives, because most of the time what we fear happening is probably not going to happen. The things that are bad, we generally don't see coming, and then we realize we already have all the resources that we need. You can handle it. It's fine. It's going to be okay. It's not okay, but you can be okay with being not okay, and then you'll be okay.
Yes.
That said, those little micro moments of, I'm not sure what the other person's going to say. I'm not sure if this is going to work out. I'm not sure if I should do this. We'll do it anyway. That's how you build the faith muscle, and then you find yourself taking what most people consider to be gambles, but for you, they're educated risks, and you can move mountains.
And I said it, the last one was the last one. This is probably one thing I love to ask in relationships is, we'll be talking about something or something will happen or we'll both witness something, right? I say, what am I about to say right now? What am I about to say right now? Because it affirms the bond that you two have, and it invites them to jump into your head. And this is something, that you do when you read novels, but we don't always do it with each other, right? You have to be able to hop inside that other person's head and see where are they coming from. And so you should have some sense. If your girlfriend, if your kid asks you that question, what am I about to say right now? You should have some idea of where they're coming from, right? And so I found that test, it can work both ways, but and it also is a test of have they been listening up to this point? Because if you just don't have any clue, then I must not have much influence, right? What am I about to say right now? And you're training the other person to see the world through your eyes and to even speak through your voice.
I think that's a beautiful way to finish this enjoyable show today. Thank you.
Joshua, this has been an absolute blessing. This is one of the best conversations I've had. It's certainly since getting, moving past my own podcast. This long format is just, it's going to work. And so I know you have a great plan in place. You're going to get it. You're going to absolutely get it. So please keep doing this, because this is a public service.
Thank you, James. Now, where can everyone follow you online?
Yeah, on X, I'm at Down I-75. On Substack, History of Michigan Politics, if you're into that kind of thing. I also do media criticism at Watching the Watchdogs. Oftentimes, the media will tell you, oh, a GM, a lawmaker, they need a watchdog to keep them honest. Well, I think the reporters need a watchdog, too.
Very fair. Thank you so much, James David Dickson. This is Daily Persuasion with Joshua Lisec.
Thank you, sir.